Hi, today I want to show you the Wized alternative that nobody has been talking about, that's free to use, that lets you add interactivity and API call functionalities inside of your Webflow website without having to use any kind of JavaScript. It'll let you do that all visually. So today I want to show you how this new exciting tool works and how you can use it for your benefit inside of your Webflow website. So as you can see right inside of here, I'm inside of Webflow, and we want to start, by just adding a section here real quick and adding a style for that section, making it 100% width, height of 100 VH, and then we'll just do flexbox center. So we can put something in the middle, right? So now we have our, basic landing page here set up in Webflow. And I can, for example, put a div inside of here. So let's just add a div block. And now I got a div, right? And let's say we want to build a weather widget. Now, I could build the weather widget and style it directly inside of Webflow. Now, the downside of that is I would have to write the code in Webflow, because Webflow doesn't let me call APIs, and it doesn't let me add some sort of advanced interactivity that is web application interactivity. Now, there are alternatives like Wized out there that are very expensive. It is $200 per million page loads, which is a lot of money, right? Because it's not per session, it's per page loads, and you have to know JavaScript to use it. But there's actually a way how you can do this without using JavaScript, and that is by using web components. Now, the web platforms that we work in, the browsers, Chrome, Safari, and so on, they all support now web components. And there's actually a cool NoCode tool out there called Toddle that is going to allow you to build interactive web components that you can compose inside of your Webflow application without writing a single line of code. So today I want to show you how you can set up, let's do a simple one, a weather widget inside of your Webflow web application, getting data from an interactive source. So let's take a look at that. So, wrong project. That's the right project, because Toddle also lets you make mobile apps, by the way, which is quite cool. But today we're going to use it to build a web component. So I do have a Toddle project today, and I just want to go on the files and I want to go on component. Let's call that Webflow weather, right? Or should we do something else? Let's do Webflow Star Wars. Let's do something cooler. We can do a Star Wars API. That's even more exciting. There you go. And we can show an interactive list of all the Star Wars characters, for example. There you go. So now I can Google the Star Wars API. So I can do Star Wars API. I can take the Star Wars API, way cooler than a weather widget, right? And then I can take the base URL of that API and set up a new API inside of my web component, and that is /people, right? /people. I can continue, and let's take a look, and then we should be getting all the Star Wars characters. There you go. That's how simple I'm setting up an API. Way simpler than using other solutions out there that require you to code those things, right? And then I can simply go and I can call that Star Wars. There you go. And now I got that dynamic data. So now I can build the widget. I can simply take a div block. It's like Webflow, right? I can make it width 25 rem, height 25 rem. There you go. I can give it a white background. I can give it a border. I can make that border grade 200. There you go. I can do it 1.5 pixels. I can give it a 20 pixel border radius. Take a look how beautiful that looks. I can add a 1 rem side padding, 1 rem top and bottom padding, and then in here I can simply start rendering my list. So I can take a div block here, I can do it with the 100%, there you go, and then I can start listing the characters. So let's do an H2, and then we'll show the name inside of here. So to render a list, I don't have to do any JavaScript, I don't have to do any fancy stuff. I'm just two-finger clicking on here, clicking on repeat, taking my API, taking the data, and then there you go. What am I getting here? I'm getting a result, and I want to take result, right? I do have it all NoCode here where I can see those things visually. Pretty cool. I can now double click in here, go on FX, and then take item and then click on name. That's going to give me the name of the item. Now there may be some other information I want to add in here. For that, I can add a span, right? I can click inside of the span, and then I can go on item, and I can go on, for example, gender, right? And then I can have the gender inside of here. How cool is that? And that is super simple without writing any line of code. And now I can just give it a gap of 0.75 rem, side padding, top and bottom padding, 0.75 rem. And then I can just give it a background color of gray 50, right? I can give it border 15 pixels. Then I can give it a border radius of all gray 200. There you go. I can now take this div that's holding it, give it a gap of 0.75 rem. There you go. Or let's do, that looks good. Or let's do 1 rem, right? And then just simply go in here on layout. I do overflow X clip, overflow Y scroll. And now we got a nice dynamic scroll list from external dynamic data. That's how cool that is. Now, when we want to do data manipulations in here, we can simply do them using Toddle's NoCode interface. So we could take this list here and we may want to sort by gender. For that, I can simply take a div block, move it up here, and now I can add a few buttons. So let's go inside of here. We have a button and we want to have some options. We can do this also actually dynamic. So we see we have male, NA, and then we have female. So let's go in here and create a variable called genders. There you go. And then that is kind of like a variable is a data placeholder where I can store certain amounts of data on the page, and I can manipulate that variable as well, right? I can do genders. I can go on the FX here, and then I'm going to add an array. That's a list of items, and now I can put in the options that are available. I can do male, n/a, and then I can go inside of here and I can do female. There you go. Now I have the options. Now I can render those options dynamically. So we have extensive preview directly in the HTML editor. So I can just preview, render those options with the genders, click inside of the text, go on FX, take the item, and I can see a preview of them. Now we want to have them next to each other. So I'll make them go next to each other. I'll center them and add 0.5 rem gap. So now I can select the appropriate ones. We can remove the hover, and then we can style them. So I could probably do this in gray 50, for example, or gray 100, and I can make the color gray 700, and I can give it a border of 100 pixels, and I can give it a side padding of 0.75 rem, and now I got those nice things in here. Now I want to select, kind of like which one I'm filtering by. So let's take a look at that again. So in here, I can add a class, something like selected, right? In Toddle classes kind of like let you set styles. It's not like Webflow classes that kind of like are like global style guidelines. And on this button here, I can create a selected style. And then on the selected style, I can make this black and I can make the text white. So we can see this is the one that I'm filtering by, right? And then inside of here, we got that now all set up. So now they are all selected because we have the selected class on them. So we want to create another variable that tells us currently which we are filtering by. So let's call that current selection. And that could be all. Now, what we forgot is we may want to add an item in here called all. For that, I just update the variable and we add an option all, so we can filter by all, not just by a specific gender. There you go. So now I want to go on this button here again and make the class dynamic. For that, I can click on the FX and I can take item. That will give me the current item. And this needs to equals the current selection. So as you can see, now all is selected because all are showing. Now if I click on this button, I need to update the current selection. So if I go on here on this button, I have my events in here. I can go on click and I can go inside of here and I can set the current selection. I go on FX and I take the item I clicked on, and now it's going to override the variable. So the variable right now for current selection is all. If I click on male, as you can see, it's going to be male. Now, we can also animate this nicely. So I can simply go on the default style. I can scroll down, go on transitions, all, and then let's do that 200 milliseconds. And now, as you can see, if I click on them, it's nicely animating between those. Now, it's not changing the underlying data structure yet because we have to do some filtering. For that, I can simply go on the repeat again, and I can add a filter formula. There you go. And this filter formula here lets me filter by let's expand that. Lets me filter by the variable. So I can go inside of here. I can take the list of all the Star Wars characters. I'm filtering, and I'm filtering here by gender. So let's take the gender. Where's the gender? We'll take the gender, and it needs to equals the current selection. Now, there is no gender all, so I would be getting everything. So what we need to do is we need to have a specific condition that if the gender equals all, we're actually returning everything. For that, we need to do an if statement, which is super simple in toddle because it's fully no code. Let's copy this whole structure here, and let's add an if statement to the nodes again. We'll delete everything we had because we already have it copied. So now I'm going to go to current selection, and I'm going to do equals all. That means that if current selection equals all, I'm going to return Star Wars data results. I'm going to return everything. If it is not all, right, it would be male, female, or not applicable, right, then we are going to use the filter to filter it by the gender. So now if I take a look at this interactive element here, I have all, that gives me all the ones here. Now I click on male, I only get the male ones. I click on not applicable, I get all the robots, and I click on female, I get all the female ones. And this is kind of like how we build an interactive component that would require us, to use code if we want to do this inside of Webflow. And if we use plugins like Wiz, we would still use JavaScript. We now built this and added interactivity without writing any line of code, fully visually. But now you may ask yourself the question, how do we get this inside of our Webflow site? That's pretty simple because Toddle builds this as a web component, which makes it shippable everywhere. I can simply go inside of here and copy the code, and the code is presented as a web component. So if I actually go to a tool like HTML Online Viewer, right, which renders HTML, we're going to see that we can remotely bring this kind of tool everywhere in. Now, there's one thing that you will be seeing is it's not loading the API data. Because when we go by default in Toddle and add an API, and if we take a look at the advanced settings, it's going to server-side fetch and proxy the request. We want to turn off the proxy and turn off the server-side fetching. We probably want to keep auto fetch on so it automatically loads, but we want to remove those settings because those settings are only working if your page is built in Toddle, right? For server-side rendering. So when we open this here, we don't have it loaded yet because we want to probably fire, oh, there you go, it's coming. It can take a little bit, but to speed things up, we probably, let's turn on server-side fetching, but also let's go to the life cycle of the web component and run the API on load. That should speed up things. So let's take a look at that here. Let's open the page and we should see that the API data is coming, right? So we're getting that data. We can now work with skeleton loaders. We can add a loader while the request is loading because we're working with an external data source. It can take a little bit to get that data, right? So what we could do is we could add a little CSS loader, right? We can go to CSS loaders and we can copy a CSS loader here. Let's copy the CSS loader, go back inside of here, and we can take this item here, and I'm just going to paste it inside of here. I got the span. Now I can simply add a style tag in here. There you go. And I can go and put that inside of here. So we'll copy the CSS, and I'm going to paste it back inside of here. I'm going to make that 18 pixels by 18 pixels, and I'm going to make that 2 pixels. There you go. Now I got my loader somewhere in here. 18 pixels by 18 pixels. That looks good. And we kind of like then want to probably do that absolute, not the style tag, but we want this to be absolute. There you go. And let's take a look. Where is that? We have it probably all the way down. So we want to take this div, make it 25 rem, 25 rem. We want to center the content in here. And then we want to copy this loader here, collapse that, go back to this div. And then we take the style tag. It needs actually to be the span. It needs to be absolute. And the style tag doesn't need to be absolute. But the span needs to be absolute, right? And then we should be able to center it in here, which doesn't work. Interesting. Let's take that span here. And, oh yeah, we need to probably wrap it in an element in a div and make that div absolute. And that's going to fix it. Take a look at that. And then we need to make this relevant again. There you go. So now we have a nice loader, and we can kind of like show the loader while the data is loading. For that, I can just do show and hide. I can take Star Wars API is loading, and that's false. So now it shouldn't load. So when we now want to export that web component here, we'll see a loader while the data is loading, right? If you use something like Wized, it will run client side as well. So that kind of like gives you a little bit of loading side on the user's device. If you were to build the whole website inside of Toddle, you wouldn't have that loading because Toddle runs server side. But if you want to work with web components, get them outside of Toddle, which gives you the same performance as Wized, you would just, you know, make the API calls and then reload them so it actually runs client side and make sure it's not proxied. So now I can go in my Webflow project and I can simply add a code embed inside of here. I can paste that web component in here. I can publish the site, and now it should work beautifully inside of my Webflow project. Now I may need to do some formatting to this. Let's take a look. And there you see, it's loading the data and it's working fully interactively inside of my Webflow page. And it's pretty fast. Take a look how lightning fast that is. Loads a little bit. You got the same experience like Wized, but you got a no-code way now of adding this interactivity inside of your Webflow mobile, inside of your Webflow website to make it a web application, to add interactivity in there. And you can do even cool things using attributes if you use it as a custom element. So that's still something we'll make another video about. But that's kind of like how you can build web applications inside of Toddle, add interactivity to your Webflow landing page without having to use other plugins, other frameworks, or custom code in it. That's a no-code way of doing it. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And if you want to learn more about Toddle, I would highly suggest you to take a look at nocodeprocode.com. That's my community where we'll be talking about those things, how to build extensive web applications and mobile applications inside of Toddle, and where you get the help you need to ship your projects faster. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And let me know in the comments how you like this approach and what you think of it. Yeah, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video. Take care.